Hello there, senior high student. Welcome to 21st Century Literature from the Philippines and the World class. We are now in Module 5. Our learning competency differentiate the various 21st century literary genres and the ones from the original genres. Period citing their elements, structures, and traditions. Our objectives are: first, differentiate the 21st century literary genres. Second, enumerate the elements and structures of each genre. And last, appreciate the unique features of each genre. Before we start our lesson, let us have first our pretest. Direction. Choose the letter of the correct answer for each item. Please write your answer on your paper. Number 1. It is a genre of speculative fiction dealing with imaginative concepts such as futuristic science and technology, space travel, time travel, faster than light travel, parallel universe, and extraterrestrial life. A. DIGI-FICTION. B. Science fiction. C. Doodle fiction. And D. Creative nonfiction. Number 2. A literary genre which combines three media: book, movie or video, and internet website. A. DigiFiction. B. Science fiction. C. Doodle fiction. And D. Creative nonfiction. For number 3, literary presentation where the author incorporates doodle writing and drawings and handwritten graphics in place of traditional font. A Spanish period. A. Digifiction. B. Science fiction. C. Doodle fiction. D. Creative nonfiction. Number 4. Stories told almost completely in dialogue, simulating social network exchanges. A. Chicklit. B. Hyperpoetry. C. Digifiction. And D. Text talk novel. Number 5. It is a genre fiction which addresses issues from modern womanhood, often humorously and lightheartedly. A. Chicklit. B. Hyperpoetry. C. Digifiction. And D. Text talk novel. Let us have first an overview of the subject. This would help you recall the nature of the subject prior to the discussion. Now, what is 21st century literature? 21st century literature refers to new literary work created within the last decade. It is written by contemporary authors which may deal with current themes or issues and reflects a technological culture. It often breaks traditional writing rules. Who is the 21st century reader? A 21st century reader grew up using technology as a primary learning tool. He is capable of navigating and interpreting digital formats and media messages. He also possesses literacy skills which include technological abilities such as keyboarding, internet navigation, interpretation of technological speak, ability to communicate and interpret coded language, and decipher graphics. So that is for the 21st century reader. Now let us have an activity. The directions: look for the conventional literary genres in the puzzle below. So you have to encircle the words. So we have four words here. All you have to do is to encircle those four words, the conventional literary genres. Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes to look for that four words in our puzzle. Time starts now. Now let us check your answer. What are the words or the conventional literary genres? Okay, first word is we have the poetry. So that is an example of conventional literary genre. Next is we have the drama. Next is fiction. And last we have non-fiction. Can you still remember the major conventional literary genres you have found in the previous activity? Can you enumerate the unique features of each genre? Now let's recall the major literary genres. First we have poetry. Is an imaginative awareness of experience expressed through meaning, sound, and rhythmic language choices so as to evoke an emotional response. It has been known to employ meter and rhyme. The very nature of poetry is an authentic and individual mode of expression makes it nearly impossible to define. Next is we have the drama. Drama is a composition in prose or verse presenting in dialogue or pantomime a story involving conflict, more contrast of character, especially on intended to be acted on a stage or a play. It may be any situation or series of events having vivid, emotional, conflicting, or striking interest. So that is for the drama. Now we have fiction. So, fiction is a literature created from the imagination, not presented as fact, though it may be based on a true story or situation. So, types of literature in the fiction include the novel, short story, and novella. So, those are the example of the literature in the fiction or types of literature in the fiction. So we have novel, short story, and novella. Now for the nonfiction, it is based on facts and author's opinion about a subject. The purpose of nonfiction writing is to inform and sometimes to persuade. Its examples are biographies, articles from textbooks and magazines, and newspapers. So those are nonfiction. This time, look at the sample picture on the right side of the screen. So analyze the content. Is the picture still a sample of conventional literary genre? Or is it more of like a modern literary genre? Let us start our learning. Okay, get ready. 21st century literature genre. The first one is illustrated novel. Story through text and illustrated images. 50% of the narrative is presented without words, and the reader must interpret the images in order to comprehend completely the story. Textual portions are presented in traditional form. Some illustrated novels may contain no text at all and span all genres. So here we have two examples of illustrated novel. On the right side of your screen, we have The Invention of Hugo Cabret, and we have also The Arrival. Number two, literature genre is for the 21st century. We have the DIGI-FICTION. For the DIGI-FICTION, it is a triple media literature. So combines three media like book, movie and video, and internet website. So in order to get full story, students must engage in navigation, reading, viewing in all three forms. So we have here an example. We have video form, book form, and the website form. So that is for the DIGI-FICTION. Next, we have the graphic novel. For the graphic novel, it is a narrative in comic book formats. Narrative work in which the story is conveyed to the reader using comic form. The term is employed in a broad manner, encompassing nonfiction works and thematically link short stories as well as fictional stories across a number of genres. So we have here an example, the Archie graphic novel. Okay, so next we have the manga. For the manga, it is a Japanese word for comics. It is used in English-speaking world as a generic term for all comic books and graphic novels originally published in Japan, considered as an artistic and storytelling style. Ameri manga, sometimes used to refer to comics created by American artists in manga style. So we have here an example. We have the cross-epoch manga and the Detective Conan manga. So we have here shonen or boys manga. Example, we have Naruto, Bleach, One Piece. Shoujo or girls manga, we have Sailor Moon. Seinen, men's manga. Example is Akira. We have Josei, women's manga. Loveless, Paradise Kiss. So those are the examples for Josei. We also have Kodomo, children's manga, like Doraemon and Hello Kitty. So those are examples of manga. For the doodle fiction, it is a literary presentation where the author incorporates doodle writing and drawings and handwritten graphics in place of traditional font. Drawing enhances the story, often adding numerous elements that would be missing if the illustrations were omitted. So for the doodle fiction, we have here an example, Diary of a Wimpy Kid book. So it looks like this for the doodle fiction. Now, number 6, we have what we call the text talk novels. It is a blogs, email, and IM format narratives. Stories told almost completely in dialogue, simulating social network exchanges. So here we have an example of text talk novels. Number 7, for number 7, we have chick lit or chick literature. Okay, so it is a genre fiction which addresses issues of modern womanhood, often humorously and light-heartedly. Chick lit typically features a female protagonist whose womanhood is heavily thermalized in the plot. So we have here an example of chick literature book. So we have The Breakfast at Darcy's, From Notting Hill with Love, Actually, The Mother of the Bride, Mr. Almost Right. So those are examples or samples of chick lit book. Now let's move on to the flash fiction. Okay, so it is a style of fictional literature of extremely brevity. There is no widely accepted definition of the length and category. It could range from word to 8,000. So we have here an example, Gratitude by Andrew E. Hunt. Okay, so this is what we call the flash fiction. Now let's have the 6-word flash fiction. So for the 6-word flash fiction, we have here an example by Ernest Hemingway, For Sale, Baby Shoes Never Worn. So it consists of 6 words. Okay, next is we have Long for Him, Got Him Shit. So by Margaret Atwood. So this is what we call the 6-word flash fiction. Okay, next we have the creative nonfiction, also known as literary nonfiction or narrative nonfiction, a genre of writing that uses literary styles and techniques to create factually accurate narratives. Contrast with other nonfiction, such as technical writing or journalism, which is also rooted in accurate fact but is not primarily written in service to its craft. As a genre, creative nonfiction is still relatively young and is only beginning to be scrutinized with the same critical analysis given to fiction and poetry. So we have here an example of true story book sample, A Kind of Miraculous Paradise, a true story about schizophrenia by Sandra Allen, and The Wisdom of Wolves, so Jim and Jamie Dutcher. So those are an example of a creative nonfiction work or a book of creative nonfiction. Now let's proceed to the science fiction. For the science fiction is a genre of speculative fiction dealing with imaginative concepts such as futuristic science and technology, space travel, time travel, faster than light travel, parallel universe, and extraterrestrial life. Often explores the potential consequences of scientific and other innovations and has been called literature of ideas. So we have here a science fiction book examples. Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, and another one is Kingdom of Ash, a Thousand of Glass novel. So by Sarah J. Maas. Next we have blog. A web blog, a website containing short articles called posts that are changed regularly. Same blogs are written by one person containing their own opinions, interests, and experiences, while others are written by many different people. So we have here an example, the Wired blog and the Gizmodo blog. Another 21st century literature genre, we have hyperpoetry, digital poetry that uses links using hypertext markup. It can either involve set words, phrases, lines, etc. that are presented in variable order but sit on the page much as traditional poetry does. Or it can contain parts of the poem that move and or mutate. It is usually found online through CD-ROM and diskette versions exist. The earliest examples date to no later than the mid 1980s. So we have here an example, the hyper poem, Three Faces, One Intention. So that those are the 13 21st century literature genre. Now let us proceed to the assessment. I believe you can make it this time. So the direction, choose the letter of the correct answer for each item. Okay, for number one, it is a genre of speculative fiction dealing with imaginative concepts such as futuristic science and technology, space travel, time travel, faster than light travel, parallel universe, and extraterrestrial life. So A. DIGI-FICTION, B. Science fiction, C. Doodle fiction, and D. Creative nonfiction. Okay, the answer is letter B. Science fiction. For number two, a literary genre which combines three media like book, movie, and video, and internet website. A. Digifiction, B. Science fiction, C. Doodle fiction, and D. Creative nonfiction. And the answer is letter A. So we have the Digifiction. For number three, literary presentation where the author incorporates doodle writing and drawings and handwritten graphics in place of traditional font. So A, we have digifiction, B, science fiction, C, doodle fiction, and D, creative nonfiction. Okay, the answer is letter C. So we have the doodle fiction. Okay, number four, stories told almost completely in dialogue, simulating social network exchanges. A. Chicklet, B. Hyperpoetry, C. Digifiction, and D. Text talk novel. The answer is yes, letter D, the text talk novel. Okay, for the last number, which is number five, it is a genre fiction which addresses issues of modern womanhood. So often humorously and light-heartedly. A. Chicklet. B. Hyperpoetry. C. DIGI-FICTION. D. Text talk novel. And the correct answer is letter A. Chicklet. Okay. Now let's have another additional activity. So the direction is compare and contrast the 21st literary genres using Venn diagram. So place your answer on the spaces provided, or you can write your answer on your notebook. Okay, for the first one, you have to compare the similarities and differences between the blog, hyperpoetry, and text talk novel. And number two, of course, we have the doodle fiction, manga, and graphic novel. So you are going to write down the similarities and the differences of the three: doodle fiction, manga, and graphic novel. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching and listening to our lesson. I hope you have learned something.